Hello everyone, my name is Jose Gabriel Martínez-Fonseca, and I would like to thank Professor Pete Foulet for the invitation to make this presentation. I will be talking about my home country in 3 small videos. These videos will be focused on giving you a better idea about the diversity of Nicaragua, their environment, their forests, animal diversity, especially bats, and my study, which focuses on how forest fragmentation affects bat communities. I would like to make a quick introduction to who am I. As I say, my name is Jose Gabriel, and I studied biology in Nicaragua through the last 12 years. I've been working mostly with amphibians and reptiles, but also small mammals like bats and rodents. As you will see, Nicaragua is an incredibly diverse country that's still very understudied. Since 2011, I've been working with Dr. Carol Chambers in research projects in Nicaragua, and in 2018 I came to NAU to start a PhD program with her and study how some groups of bats are affected by changing conditions of the forests where they live. And we will talk a bit more about what I'm doing in the last video. I need to say I also enjoy wildlife photography, and I must say that it's one of the first reasons I switched from environmental engineering to biology when I was an undergrad. So I always like to provide some context about where Nicaragua is, and Nicaragua, as you can see, is right in the middle between North America and South America. This location influences a lot the species that you can find in the country. If we look closely to Central America topography, you will see that Nicaragua is the first lowest point in elevation coming from the north. This means that many species from the highlands of North America encounter a barrier in the Nicaraguan depression, and that's going to limit their distribution. For example, all species of pines and birds like the Steller's jay and acorn woodpeckers have their southernmost distribution in the north of Nicaragua. Something similar happened with species coming from the south. Nicaragua diversity is great. I will show you some quick examples. Here we have a neotropical river otter in the bottom right corner and a tiger heron. It almost look like they're chatting. Nicaragua is also home of an estimate of about 400 jaguars, and we also have other big species like tapir and giant anteaters. Fun fact, this photo of this jaguar was taken about an hour after I set up the camera and moved out of that trail. That was pretty fun to know that they were so close. We also have a great diversity of small mammals. Here's a tyra. Many people haven't heard about this animal, but this is a large relative of ferrets that live in dense rainforests. Another of my favorites is the water opossum, related to more famous marsupials like the Virginia possum, koalas, and kangaroos. This animal not only has a pouch to carry its baby, but it's also well adapted to semi-aquatic environment. So it even has a waterproof pouch and webbed feet, which allow them to dive in the rivers and search for shrimp and other prey. As I say, I like reptiles, and in Nicaragua we have about 255 species of amphibians and reptiles. About 115 of those are snakes. Here's a beautiful venomous Mexican moccasin that I found near my home. This is another example of a crazy snake. Believe it or not, this is an inoffensive, non-venomous snake with this weird pattern of colors that confuse potential predators by showing colors that are similar to the venomous coral snakes. Here's a cute dart frog. This is probably the size of your fingernails, and it has a poisonous skin, and you can kind of tell because of the bright colors it has. Finally, Nicaragua is also home of about 750 species of birds, including this mud, which is the national bird of the country. This whole animal diversity is influenced by the diversity of habitat, which is also related to the topography of the country. As you can see, Nicaragua has a big lowland plain in the Caribbean coast, here on the right. I don't know if you can see the mouse actually. Then we have some highlands in the north, and then we have again lowlands in the east of the Pacific coast. The mountains in the middle of the country create a rain shadow effect, with the humidity prevailing from the northeast and to southwest winds, discharging most of the rain in the East Caribbean lowland. You can see all the clouds in the right side of the image. The Pacific is much drier, but still has more humidity than Flagstaff. We also only have two seasons, the rainy season and the dry season. Depending on where you are in the country, the dry season lasts from 2 to 6 months. In places with long dry seasons, the changes in vegetation along the year is spectacular. Here's a view of the landscape a few kilometers south from my home during the dry season. And here is 4 months later, just after the rains started. Isn't that incredible? Most productive soils in the country are in the Pacific, which are of volcanic origin. And this soil productivity also drives the human population to be concentrated in the Pacific. Depending on the criteria you use, Nicaragua has 9 to 27 forest types. These forest types are defined by precipitation and elevation. Feel free to pause this video and study this graph a bit longer. But in general, the pattern is that in the east is the east is wet, and the west is dry. Higher elevations are usually wetter than relative to their surrounding areas. And I just want to show you some picture of what those forests look like. For example, this is montane moist forest. As I say, montane means like a bit higher elevation with a lot of precipitation. Is more than 2 meters of rain per year. And depending what side of the country, you can have pine forest with a lot of aerial plants, which is kind of like a really weird combination. In other areas, you can find giant ferns and with all the moss on the trees. And in lower elevations on the west coast, you find the driest areas. This one has still like 1.5 times more rain than Flagstaff, but it's more shrubbery, and it just looks completely different to the lowlands on the other side of the mountains that get about 5 meters of rain. I don't know how many inches is that, but it's probably, I believe, around 12 times as much rain as Flagstaff gets. And as you can see, we have these really wide rivers there that also flood the part of the forest during times of the year. In the lowland wet forests, there are some areas with Caribbean pine. And for example, this photo is from the northeast corner of the country, and you can find pine savannas that are at sea level, which is a truly unique habitat. In some of the dry areas, there are a few inactive volcanoes that get more rain because of the high elevation, and we call these cloud forests sky islands. And these mountain tops or volcano tops, there are endemic species of plants and animals that have developed there because of the isolation. And yes, we have many active volcanoes. Some of them are really active. Truly spectacular event. In both coastal areas, the Pacific and the Caribbean, we also have mangroves. Sadly, most of the mangroves in the Pacific have been converted to shrimp farms. And here we can see the estuary of the largest river in the Pacific. It's a bit difficult to see, but this is the main river. And all these squares are basically human-made ponds for growing shrimp. Also very sad, Nicaragua ranks very high in the deforestation rate, and in these few maps you can see how much forest we have lost in the last decades. And another sad thing is that despite almost 20% of the country is legally protected, the enforcement of those laws is poor, and deforestation is really affecting those areas too. So you can see deforestation going inside what is supposed to be a protected area, and it all comes down to not having enough money or resources to enforce those laws and keep control of people going in and colonizing, yeah, you know what I mean, the area. And this brings the problem of forest fragmentation. Forests usually don't just disappear completely, but they degrade and get fragmented. So like in the graph you can see a solid piece of forest, it gets logged or is slashed and burned, and it becomes smaller patches. It becomes a matrix of forest and non-forest. This affects different species in different ways, because some species are adapted and need disturbances to thrive, but other species need more pristine conditions to be able to find their roost, food, reproduce, and other requirements. Some species won't leave continuous forests at all, and that means that if they get trapped in a single patch of forest, they won't be able to cross a pasture to go to another patch and reproduce. So those are basically prone to extinction, at least locally. Much of this deforestation in the country, especially in the east, is caused by colonizers that come from cities in the west. They cut a huge amount of forest to generate pastures for the cows. And this is an example of a site I visited in 2012, I think. And this family living in this single house have cut the equivalent to about 350 acres of forest, like really beautiful, huge trees, and they cut them just to make space for about 25 cows. It is really sad. This topic is very complex and involve a lot of factors: social, economical, political, and ecological, and it deserves a whole other presentation, but I wanted to make you aware of this. With that, I think this is the end of the first video. In the second video, we're gonna talk about the Nicaraguan bats. There's so much to say about them, and I will try to summarize the coolest things about them. So thank you very much.